Hey, want to do some advertising? I'd love to see you do some advertising right here on the podcast. Tales from the Cube. We're happy to have you on board telling your story about your business, product, or service. Right here in the podcast. All you have to do is send an email to foureyesfreelancing@gmail.com. foureyesfreelancing@gmail.com. That's where you send it with the subject line "Tale," and we'll get back to you with details. Now, back to the show.
I'm Cliff Tour, and this is Tales from the Cube, a podcast about working in the call center industry. The good, the bad, the funny, and not so funny about life working in the call center industry. Welcome to episode 23011. This is Tales from the Cube. My name is Cliff. Nice to have you on board. I hope you enjoy this particular episode. We're going to talk about premium service numbers and what kind of call centers basically would operate in this space that works with those particular numbers. They still exist mostly in the 800 and 900 spectrum, and they're all over the world, so there's different exchanges if you are calling in different countries. But in their heyday, 900 numbers, particularly here in North America, were a big money maker for a lot of companies, and I think you'll find it pretty fascinating to discover what went on. It's still going on, by the way, but not as big as it once was. So we're going to talk about premium service numbers and how they are basically used to make money for call centers and companies that engage in the use of those particular numbers. Before I continue, though, I do want to clarify something from the last episode. In episode 23010, I spoke about the operations manager and how they work. I actually had a very interesting comment from somebody who was basically pointing out that it sounded like I was criticizing the operations managers or operations or management team of my company. First and foremost, as you will notice most of the times in this podcast, you'll never hear my company mentioned because I'm not a representative of the company. I don't have the voice to basically speak for the company. When I say I'm not a representative, I'm not a public relations representative for my company. So basically, I don't have the empowerment to speak for the company at all or about the company. And criticizing a company, particularly when you work for it, is kind of tricky business. I probably will get into that as another episode. So no, the criticisms or the thought processes that I spoke about and how I think about people with respect to that particular role are one, in the mind, two, in the practice, and three, in the reality of the situation. In the mind, I might think something about somebody and say, that's what I really think. But in practice, I would never actually verbalize some of the things I said in the episode. And also, in reality, the reason for that is because I'm talking to a boss. I'm talking to somebody who is in charge of me, and basically I would never want to be rude to them. As I point out, it was a general statement about any operations manager in any call center. So there you go. That's the scoop on that. That's the skinny. So let's get back to the episode at hand here, which is going to be about the 900 and 800 number block, which is, as you know, out there. They are known as premium rate lines, or premium rate lines still exist in the 800 spectrum, but most numbers in the 800 are toll-free. But there was a group of numbers, and still is actually a group of numbers, that are in the 900 range. These numbers are used to basically bill per minute on a phone call, not a credit card. So when you're calling, you're being billed per minute on your phone bill. And essentially, they can be for anything, really, if you think about it. The weather, technical support that you get, you can dial a 900 number. If you're voting for a particular artist on a show like The Masked Singer or, America's Got Talent, if you're voting for a particular cause or, supporting something, you might be calling a number to do that, and you're going to be billed the minute you start to talk to somebody. The most common thing they were used for were sex and chat lines and psychic lines. So what happened was you would call up and you would get a psychic reading from Mystic Marine, or if you were calling a sex line, you might be talking with wonderful Wanda, or terrific Dan, or a terrific Terry, or whoever was on there. They would have ads on TV. You might have seen these old ads on the internet and some of the YouTube videos, but back in the day they were there, and they're still kind of there, where you would have these hot-looking models, and they would say, "Hi, call us at this number," and they would post the number, and you would call up, and basically you would be supposedly speaking with that particular individual or their friends. Now you should understand that really you're not speaking with that person. Let's be clear. If you're calling up, you're not really speaking with the psychic. You're not speaking with the person who is supposed to be wonderful Wanda and her friends. You're actually calling a call center, or you were calling a call center of people. And just like any other call center, it's made up of staff who are running it and who are taking the calls. So you have your regular managers, your operations manager, your director of the call center, your quality evaluator, your person that's basically going to be doing the actual taking of the calls, and that's basically how it works. It's a regular call center. Now, most of these people might have been in other countries as well, so they might have been hanging out in, say, the UK or Germany or wherever, but they were just, English speakers, of course. And when you would call them, basically, you would be speaking to them, and their goal basically was to keep you on the line as long as possible, because the bottom line is, sure, the telephone company was making money, but so was the business. And that basically was the idea here. The business would be going forward and doing that and collecting some money off that. So they would get the 900 service number, the telephone company would allow the billing, they take some money, and of course the business would take some money. And it was big. It was a very, very large part of a business acumen back in the day, and they made money. I mean, there's hand over fist a lot of money that was made up into the billions of dollars, $3 billion at one point. So why don't these numbers exist? Why don't, for example, 900 numbers basically get mentioned anymore in the real world, so to speak, or why aren't they out there? Well, laws came into effect, basically, that killed it. Looking at Wikipedia here, from the early 1990s through from the early 1980s through the early 90s, it was common for some commercials promoting 900 numbers to children. Okay? So basically, you would have numbers that were directed at kids to speak to characters in a show, like G.I. Joe, or the character might be like She-Ra. So they would basically have this, and your child would call up and listen to a special message. Even Santa Claus was used for this. Well, eventually it really didn't go so well for that, because in one situation a child was billed on their phone line for $17,000. Think about that. $17,000 is what they got hit for. So basically, after a while, parents and concerned groups started saying, hey, this is getting a little out of hand. People are calling up, we don't really know what the cost is, and we need to fix that. So eventually the Supreme Court stepped in and said that there had to be certain things done. So they made it so that it was pretty hard for these companies to operate, eventually killing the 900 business for adult lines and the like, because they put in very serious restrictions where you essentially had to have in writing that you wanted to have access to that number. So essentially, that's what happened. Now, if you go to the Wikipedia page, which I will post on the show note here, you'll see what I'm talking about. It really was quite a time and quite a thing, for sure. Now, those numbers, by the way, the number blocks were 900, 976. Those were very common. 970, etc., etc. And essentially, they were sometimes used as a local prefix. These numbers were dialed as any other number, such as 9761234, for example. So you would dial 9761234 and you would get that line. Or you might dial a 1-900 number, 555-1212, and so on and so forth. Onward and forward they went, doing their thing, and then eventually the law kicked in and it caught up to them, and they were forced to go somewhere else. A lot of these 900 services were basically bounced off, if you will, and moved into the 800 section of the dialing prefixes for North America. Now, the kind of people that would work in these call centers, of course, are more or less actors or people who are, down on their luck who needed to get a quick buck, because you would also get money for commission. Obviously, if you're working in that kind of call center, you're going to get some money because you're keeping that customer on the line. So it can get very expensive. For example, they have such services here that I've seen. I've looked them up in the Toronto area for calling up ladies and speaking with them. Again, remember, you're talking to an actress or an actor, and essentially when you dial them up, you might have the first couple of minutes for free, and then essentially what happens is you get billed, and it's on your credit card, and it's not cheap. It's $2.50 a minute, I saw in one of these lines. So it can be very, very expensive. So you do need to be aware of that. It's going to be a pay through the nose kind of thing. The other thing too, you have to remember, particularly if you're going to be working on these chat lines or dating lines, or even if you're doing phone sex on an 800 number, while you're going to be getting money, you're also going to be experiencing some calls that are pretty wild. Let's just say that your customer is going to be wanting you to say and do certain things on a call, and are going to be talking about certain things on a call that are very, very, well, if I can put it politely, gross, I guess, for most people. I'm not going to describe that here on this podcast. We are more or less a family-friendly podcast here, so I'm not going to go into details as to what you might be hearing back from the actor on that call, but needless to say, it is very adult in nature, and if you're not used to that kind of thing, this is not the kind of work you want to get into. Also, a lot of people who are working in the sex trade do buy a 1-800 number and will charge you on your credit card for hearing their voice or hearing them talk to you if you even get them, or for ordering different things like their videos. That's as far as I'll go with that, and other things too I won't again go into, but essentially that's how this all works. But it's not just sex and chat lines for dating and such that are on there. As I mentioned, you might call for the weather, you might call for your bank, you might go for technical support through a line like that and be billed. Modern day companies that have this, like for example Microsoft, use an 800 service number. They don't use the 900 prefix, but they use an 800 service. If you call them, you're billed on your credit card. You're told that they're going to be billed, and so on and so forth. So this is still a thing. There are people that still do it. You could still reach out and get maybe a psychic on the phone as well. Again, remembering that these are people who are just doing this as an act. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Would I want to do this kind of work? No, not really. I actually did apply to work for a dating service that basically promoted the idea that you could leave an ad and you have your special inbox number. People would call the main 900 number or 800 number. They knew that they were going to be billed for the call, but they could listen to your voicemail, and you would You would actually, I think it would be you that would be billed for the usage. People could call in for free, and you would be billed per call, I believe, or per month. My job would have been to QE the voicemail that was used to basically get people to leave a message for the customer. So I would listen and determine whether this was a good voicemail greeting for the people that, calling in or not. And the guy who I interviewed with was very fast. He could pick out really quickly whether that particular voicemail greeting was going to work, whether that box was usable or not because of whatever that person was saying. And a lot of them, believe it or not, he said nope, nope, nope to. He said this reason, this reason, this reason. And he told me that I would learn how to do that. Listen for these particular things. So obviously things that were graphic, things that were, highly inappropriate, or things that were sketchy on the call, or promoting things on the call that would not be a normal thing, were basically kicked out. And you would have to call the person who was buying the service, who was wanting to put that box together and get messages in that box. You would say to them, hey, you have to re-record this because it violates the terms of service. So those things were out there. Like I said, I did an interview. I never did get the job. If you look on YouTube too, you could probably look up 900 numbers and see some of the things. New Kids on the Block did this. Who else did this? Let me take a look. I did see this on Wikipedia. I think Dionne Warwick and her psychic friends were in there. So imagine that, Dionne Warwick promoting the idea that you could reach out to a psychic. I don't know if Oprah's ever done that. That would be funny, Oprah's psychic line. But, in the end, it really is essentially just like any other call center that you're reaching out to. But in some cases it's for entertainment, others it's for business, and all of it is billed to you, whether you're the person using the service to get somebody to leave a voicemail, or you're promoting the idea that you're going to fix somebody's computer, or offer the weather, or even offer the opportunity for people to hear astronauts on the International Space Station. That's what that is. It's an 800 number that has a credit card billing, and also the 900 numbers that are still operating out there. They're few and far between now. They do still work, but you're more than likely going to be calling a toll-free number, and if you want a service on that toll-free number, you're going to have to accept the charges for any kind of billing. That's pretty much it in a nutshell for this particular thing. I want to also invite you to basically do advertising with us. Speaking of advertising, I won't bill you except for the ad. If you want to get a 30, 45, or 60-second ad here on the podcast, I'd be happy to entertain that. Basically, the idea is that we want to have a space for you to promote your service, product, or item that you're doing a sale on right here on the podcast. All you have to do is email me at foureyesfreelancing@gmail.com. That's foureyesfreelancing@gmail.com, and send in your request with the subject line Tales or Advertise on Tales, and I'll get back to you with details as to what we do next, and we'll put together a 30, 45, or 60-second ad for you and get you basically some audience, hopefully listening to us, and basically also and saying, I'd like to go forward with that. So with that in mind, I'm going to basically go forward and end this particular episode. I want to say thank you very much for tuning in and listening to Tales from the Cube. My name is Cliff. I will see you in the next episode right here on Spotify or your other favorite channel. Thanks again for listening. Tales from the Cube can be heard on Spotify, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcasts, as well as through the Anchor platform. I'm Cliff Tour. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next Tales from the Cube episode.